Welcome to the Queens of the Neuroverse podcast. I'm Dr. Kalin Johnson. Join myself and my wife, Marnie Bothmer, as we make sense of this neurodivergent life so you can feel empowered to reign over your Neuroverse. Hey, everybody. Hello. Welcome to the first episode of the Queens of the Neuroverse podcast. I'm Dr. Kalin Johnson, hosting, and this is my wife, Marnie Bothmer. Hello. And we are here to really try to plug a hole in the neurodivergent world of podcasting. We really felt like, it's March 12th of 2025 right now as we're recording this. And the world's pretty much on fucking fire. And we were like, you know what? Like, we want to laugh. We want to have just some joyous hilarity moments around what it means to live a neurodivergent life and really find a way that we can all take a step forward in our most, and I know we're also tired of these words, but our most unmasked and authentic self. But also actually, both are true. There's a lot of podcasts that are there's just no shade to any of these. There's amazing podcasts that we have both been on and yeah, but there's a lot that are just more interview based or that are just information and how to live your best life as a neurodivergent human. And we'll still have that, but we wanted it actually to be a little less, formal. Yeah, maybe that's a good word for it. I think we wanted it just to be, again, you're sitting here in our shared office space that we have on a really nice, comfy couch, which is just such a pleasant sensory experience. It's velvety and we're recording from Omaha, Nebraska, and there's something really huge here called Nebraska Furniture Mart, which is it is a destination in the Midwest. It is. Everybody loves Nebraska. Yeah. So if you come to Nebraska, get your beef and get your furniture. Also See's Candy, which is from California, I think, right? They have See's chocolates. Yeah. But Warren Buffett owns, I guess, Nebraska Furniture Mart, and he really likes them. So they have a little See's Candy thing here. There you go. Which we don't have in Nebraska otherwise. So if you're from California and you're that's not a big deal. It's a big deal here. You can get it in the Nebraska. You can also go to Subway. So as you walk in, you can smell gross bread as you shop for your treadmills and couches. Which is not a great sensory experience, which for neurodivergent people, it's rough. But even growing up as a child, we made a pilgrimage to Nebraska Furniture Mart. Yeah, she's from Kansas, 3 hours north to Nebraska Furniture Mart, which I will never forget because the people we went with, their brakes went out. Well, while you were driving, right? Were you in their car? No, they were in the other car. I know. And I was I don't know. Gosh, I was maybe 9 or 10. And for whatever reason, again, this is totally a neurodivergent thing too. I don't know if you all experience this, but when my system is dysregulated, often rather than crying when it's a hard thing, I laugh. Yeah. I laugh. I would have laughed too. Yes, for sure. Just laughing hysterically. I still laugh about it when I think about it because I literally just think of them it's terrifying. I went down the road. What happened? I guess they fixed it. Again, my 9-year-old self. I don't know why they fixed it. They just went into a bank or. Oh my goodness. That's not also neurodivergent. I was just on to the next thing. That was it. To them. But all of that to say, Nebraska Furniture Mart is where it's at here. It's great furniture. And we literally got this, nobody wanted this couch. It was on clearance because orange couch. If you're watching us here on YouTube, you can see that it's orange, but it's velvety and it's amazing. It's burnt orange, very 70s. It is. But this is really what this podcast is going to be. It's going to be a total, just non-linear spider web thinking situation of us just talking about how we exist and experience our neurodiverse life. And the name of the podcast is Queens of the Neuroverse. And when we were really developing this, we were really thinking about how much we really set an intention every day of being able to really reign queens over our lives. And that's what we want for everyone listening to this podcast too. And knowing too, even when we trip up, even when we have these neurodivergent, spicy moments that often our brains are so hard on ourselves about that we can laugh at them. Yep. We can be in solidarity with them. Not with each other. Perfectionism. That's definitely not going to be a thing. So especially from this girl, not that this girl's going to have it, but you just have it a little bit more than I do. Just that's how your brain works. So it comes across to others as perfectionism. So I'm ADHD autistic, definitely lean more autistic. She's ADHD, which we find a lot of couples with a lot of the patients that I work with, which will go down. We're both healthcare providers, have our own practices, work with patients and clients one-on-one. But with a lot of people I work with, that's really common where you've got one part of the duo of a partnership that leans towards autism, leans more autism. The other one leans more ADHD, which
It's interesting. Obviously it works because there's a lot, like you said, of that. So
yeah. So I think though a lot of times when you lean towards that tism side, because you end up looking at a problem so completely, sometimes comes across as perfectionism, because we actually usually are not to like, we are really good at making decisions because we look at them so wholly all the time, but it's not always out of perfectionism. It's just like, well, yeah, if I'm going to answer this question, if I'm going to look at this problem, of course I'm going to look at it from literally every angle. How else would I do it?
My brain just like jumps into an answer right away, even if it's not always fully thought out. So
but there's benefits to that, because sometimes I'm over there on the sideline like, hold on, like literally before we record this podcast, like she's like, let's go, and I'm like, hold on 1 second, I gotta think about it from this and this, and she's like, come on.
Difference in brain. But well, when we're just like chatting, but also we were gonna have maybe kind of like a semi-focus, which is gonna be on communication, and I think that's actually one of our, like, not to be like, oh, here's a couples problem. That's probably one of our biggest issues sometimes, is our communication styles in regards to that. Because when I would say, like, when I speak, it's not that I'm not thinking about the words, but like, I think I just have like 50 words in my head and I just pull one out. Like, it doesn't mean it's the best word. It doesn't mean it's the most accurate. I just say it, and but like, I don't think about it too much, right? Like, I just get the general whole of what I'm saying, but like, she will literally think about every single word that I say to its precise meaning. And so if then like she'll get caught up on that, or like, and then I get frustrated because like, she's like the way that I worded the question doesn't make sense. I'm like, that's not the point. Like, don't worry about how I worded it, you know? But like, so I think that's kind of usually our biggest thing. A really side note, like, I also coach at Orange Theory, and like, oftentimes, so I'm coaching, and like, we have like, usually if you've ever taken class, there's like 3 different areas. So we have like the treadmills, the rowers, and the floor. And in my brain, I think those words just exist. So I just say them, but they might not be attached to the correct group. So like, the people are running on the treadmill and I'm trying to address them, and I'll be like, floor side, but it's more like my brain just like throwing out a word. I'm not like thinking, you know, long. I'm like, just kidding, treadmill. So I feel like that's more mine. Whereas I would imagine if you were a coach there, you would probably always address the treadmills correctly.
Yeah.
You know,
my favorite Marnieism of this right here, of just throwing out a word, is she'll throw out one when she's either talking about a window or a mirror.
I forget those a lot.
Like,
it's just like it's just like, it's not, I don't know what that is, but
I do. So here's where we will talk about, like, where we'll kind of break into some of the science of it. So this is kind of the other half of what we want this podcast to be, to still be somewhat like informative, because
we do, especially her, like, just truthfully, like, really do know a lot of.
You do about the body, though, too, and we'll definitely be talking about stuff like that. So both of us, though, while, again, we're both neurodivergent, we both own businesses and practices where we work with patients, clients, one-on-one with the public. And a lot of our clients and patients are neurodivergent. I mean, that's who I really work with exclusively. You don't necessarily work with that exclusively. However, like attracts like, a lot of yours are going to fall into that camp anyways. And that probably is who you work best with, because that is how your brain works. So because of that, like, a lot of my practice is teaching neurodivergent people how their brains work, how to understand their brain, how to work with their brain, as well as their body. So I work with a lot of people as well with chronic disease states, inflammation, as well as connective tissue disorders, especially Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, all types. I've got patients who are hypermobile. I've got a patient with classic EDS, Ehlers-Danlos syndrome. So work with all of that. So my hope is, as we talk about things on this podcast, we can stop too, and we can break down and actually know, like, what is happening. So when you're like, oh my gosh, I experienced that too, I can give you the why. Because one of the things about neurodivergent communication is we really need to know the why. We have to know the why to make sense of it. And that's something, oh my gosh, I would get so frustrated, like, either as a kid, when I would be like, but why? Like, why are we doing this? Like, the kid in class who's raising their hand being like, but why are we learning this? That's a neurodivergent kid. And they're not.
I did that in, I think I told you, I was my junior year of high school, and it was pre-calculus. And like, I was just like, this is so stupid and hard, or like sine, tangent, cosine. And I was like, Mrs. Detterman, shout out to Mrs. Detterman. I think REP Mrs. Detterman. But I was like, why do we need to know this? And she said, or no, I think I said, when are we going to use this in life? And she said, you're not going to, but it helps you critically think. But I was like actually, this answer was fine for me. I was like, okay, thank you. Like, thank you for being honest. And like, okay, like, I know. I mean, of course, some people are, but most of us aren't going to. But no, I like being able to critically think. So.
Right. So I can
figure out fascism.
Right. The why with, yes, hashtag that.
I just went to the left just to try it. I don't think I've ever done that. Looks so weird. Sorry.
For all those watching on YouTube and those
right.
listening on the podcast, Marnie's trying to wink with each eye, practicing using each side of her brain. Anyways, tangent. But we'll talk a little bit about, again, like why the brain is doing what it's doing, why that's actually happening. Again, so core for us. So why we need that why. So first thing, ADHD brains, autistic brains, neurodivergent brains, but especially, again, we'll talk especially a lot ADHD and autism specifically. We'll reach out into PTSD, OCD, some other neurodivergent aspects as well. But obviously ADHD and autism are probably like what we know the best. We have probably a little bit of other things going on as well too, because as you know, they're all like cross over and they're all just like symptoms of a dysregulated nervous system in so many ways. Another tangent, but what a neurodivergent brain has, what it has going on in having to understand the why is it really needs to know where it is in time and where it's going. It needs the bookends. If it doesn't have the bookends, the neurodivergent brain flounders.
I was trying to learn a game. Sorry, no, like I feel like for me, like my parents, like I grew up like we're big board game people, card game people. And so if I'm like, hey, will you please explain this game to me? And somebody starts with like how to play it. It's like, I need to understand the why, like what's the goal? What am I trying to do first? Then I can understand how to play the game. But if you just start telling me like, I'm like, why would I, like you need 4 cards. Why do I need 4 cards? And then you pick doubles. Why am I picking double? Like, what am I trying to do? So sorry, that just made me think of that. My dad and I used to just like butt heads about things like that. 'Cause I'm like, the way you're explaining this does not work for my brain and I'm so confused.
Right, because you had to know where you were going. Like you had to know that. Again, that's like part of like the context of it. And so one of the examples I use with this a lot is like a neurotypical brain, because it thinks linearly. If you gave it steps of a recipe to make and you didn't tell them what they were making, they would be able to just follow step 1, then step 2, then step 3, step 4. If I told somebody who's neurodivergent and I just gave them the steps, but I didn't tell them they were making a cake for somebody's birthday and it was going to be a 2-tiered cake,
A Victorian sponge cake.
yeah, I would need to give you all of this context for you to really understand then the directions and how to really correctly interpret them. And I remember talking to some of my patients about this and they were like, seriously, like a neurotypical could do that? Like they could just not know and go step by step.
Stuff like that's helpful. Side note, I think, because my sister has said before, like, well, aren't we all like, what's the difference between like a neurodivergent and neurotypical brain? Because I feel like, again, like attracts like. So a lot of us, we think maybe similarly. So it's hard to sometimes understand like what a neurotypical brain would think like. And so I feel like some of these things like that, we're like, oh, okay, that makes sense. I don't know. Yes, it's one thing to be like, oh, like executive functioning is easier for them. But like, what does that mean? But I feel like even like examples of that. Like, oh, okay.
Linear versus nonlinear thinking is probably one of the easiest ways to spot that, is like they don't need that end goal. Like we have to know what we're aiming for. At a job one time I got promoted, which was great. Again, I didn't always work for myself and I was so burnt out and I felt like I didn't really have clear expectations of what I needed to do for my job. And yet,
minor issue.
Yeah, right. And yet I got promoted and got promoted easily. So like, great, wonderful. But oh my gosh, I was so burnt out and I kept getting feedback when I had submitted all of my information for that promotion that they were like, wow, like you've done a lot. Like you could be like already promoted like higher with the things you've done. And I was like, seriously? Are you fucking kidding me? Like I have been running myself into the ground this whole time for the last X amount of years. And I didn't necessarily need to be doing all of that. And this is not maintainable for me. So I went to my boss and I was like, hey, can you help me clarify the expectations of my job? And the response I got was, no, you got promoted. Clearly, you know the expectations of your job. That was great.
Yeah, thanks.
And really triggery for urgent brain, where again, felt super misunderstood. Huge core trigger for all of us
like,
neurodivergent.
I mean, I don't know. This word gets like overused a little bit. So I don't know if this is exactly how I want to use it, but I feel like kind of like gaslighting. I don't know. Where it's just like, what is this? Like,
Right,
I don't know. Just being like, oh, you should already know.
Right.
What?
Exactly.
No, thank you.
That I didn't
Because I'm asking you a question, so I clearly don't.
Right, that I didn't actually know my own subjective experience in that you're telling me I know. And I get from the opposite side. They're like, no, you did the thing.
You're doing it correctly, so I didn't do anything different.
But I didn't know why I was doing it correctly.
Yeah.
And so repeating it felt
like, what am I repeating?
I didn't know, other than just running myself into the ground.
Right.
And I
people
couldn't
weren't running
do that
themselves
again.
into the ground.
No, they weren't. Or some people were, but they were in the same boat and I didn't want to be in that boat either. I wanted to be in my nice yacht, just like cruising around. Instead, I felt like I was just constantly like doing this and they're like, but your boat's still afloat. And I'm like, you're gonna pay for me. Like, no. So anyways, like that's so core to what we need and what we do. And there was something else that we were talking about, and now I can't remember exactly what it was, but I was going to talk about the ADHD brain. And you were saying you didn't know why your brain stored.
Oh, like mirror with glass.
Yes. Yeah. Right. So, okay. So here's another thing that the brain does. So the hippocampus, its job is basically, yes, exactly. It keeps memories. It's kind of like the stenographer of all of your experiences. It's like sitting there jotting down everything that it notices from how you sensory experience the world at any sort of event. So let's say something is really important to the brain. Like let's say the analogy I always use, being chased by a tiger, right? It's really activating for the nervous system if you were chased by a tiger. I wouldn't know, haven't had it happen, but I would imagine it probably is pretty activating to the nervous system. Valid. So the hippocampus is going to be sitting down there being like, all right, a tiger was orange, noted. We are going to fear everything orange. Okay, it was dark out when the tiger was chasing us. Great. We're going to be scared of something like a tiger chasing us every time it's night out, like all these different things. And so it's trying to classify everything that happened and basically put it into a folder in your brain. That way it keeps you safe. Yep. When it's dark out, it'll be like, pull out the dark folder. What's in there? Great. Okay. That's everything we know about this, which is why though, sometimes it goes too broad. So you have a folder in your brain for glass and your folder for glass. There are mirrors and windows.
Like everything's the same.
So when you open that folder, you're just like, okay, whatever, pull one out.
I have to like really think about which word I want to use.
A lot of times.
I actually do know the difference.
Right, totally. But a lot of times, especially I would say, like you probably find it more with autism, we probably have more nuanced folders. So like I have one probably that's like glass, but then in my glass folder probably have tabs that I've like created to like quickly pull that out. But I will say like there are areas that I struggle with word recall as well, because we do have so many folders, because there are so many tabs, kind of like on my computer where I think I knew where I put the tab, and I didn't. Quite often, like we'll both be sitting there and we'll be like, you know, it's like when you know the word for, and we're both like, nope,
let's just leave it.
Nope. But that's why that's happening.
Another one side note. And so I didn't say what I do, but I'm a personal trainer. And so I work with people in personal training. And another, I guess I said I worked Orange Theory, but that's like on the side. And another thing I feel like that I always like just throw out as words are different joints, you know? So I'll be like, okay, like you put your elbow on your knee. And then I'm like, I mean, your wrist, I mean, your shoulder, I mean, whatever. So I feel like similar thing. Again, if I sat and thought about it, I could tell you what joints are what joints. But when I'm just saying joints, like, they're just, there's words.
So for me, especially leaning on the autism side, language is everything for us.
I have another client. If you listen to this, I'll know who it is. Shout out. Yes, that's, yes. For our communication, I have to vary like, hold on, Marnie. I'm not saying things very clearly. Sorry, I jumped. I didn't even let you finish your sentence.
That's all right. That's part of ADHD impulsivity. We both do it to each other all the time. And again,
I was like, I know what you're going to say. Let me see.
Yeah, but laugh about here. Yeah. So like, for me, like the language, the individual word used, you can even hear me as I'm like pausing to like,
just like thinking about each word.
Exactly. I'm thinking about each word, not the overall necessarily meaning of the sentence, I'm going to say, but the meaning of each word and how that then informs the entire sentence. So I will pick words then that are supposed to be, are going to be best for correctness, which is important too, because in autism, often we pick words that we feel like are most correct for what we're trying to describe, but they're not always most correct for the social context of the situation.
Yeah, it's an interesting thing.
So, as like a teen, I had read in English class, we were reading a lot of like old like English novels and stories. So specifically a lot of like Shakespeare and like the Odyssey and things like that. And so I think I just kind of was like, you know, picking up new words and phrases and reading
that in that mindset.
Right. And certain ones though also that felt, I was like, oh, this is like a really great like correct word for the situation. Specifically when I maybe is like, am like calling someone out for like, this person who always does this thing, like that they're maybe saying something about like, oh, Kalin, like you left your shirt on the floor. And I'm like, yeah, you are saying this, the person who always leaves your shirt on the floor. So my brain at the time decided that yeehoo sounded like a really good like way to like very correct way to like phrase into that. So I would, if somebody said that, like, Kalin, what the heck, your shirt's on the floor. I'd be like, yeah, yeehoo always leaves your shirt on the floor. And my entire family would just like rib me so hard for it. And they were like, you. And I remember though, I felt so defensive about it. I was like, but I used it correctly. Like, but it's correct. And I like,
we just don't live in Shakespearean times.
And I was like, but what does that matter?
Yeah.
It's a good word for the situation. Like, what? Really, really hard for me. So yes, like anytime she uses those words, it's difficult. And I know like, so that's like the funny side, but it's even hard sometimes on the, I don't know, like more emotional side or even like triggery side. Like I can be so much more triggered by language where she can just like throw it out. And then I'm like, that word's hard for me. That word's hard for me. And so that ends up having to us be like, force us into like this partnership often of like understanding that it's hard for both of us on both sides.
Yeah, it's like really hard for my brain to have to sit here and really think about each word.
It's
if I don't, it can be really hard for her brain on the other end. And so,
both are dysregulating for us. So it's kind of knowing that with us, you know, in our marriage, that it's not going to be perfect for either of us. So it's kind of each thing we encounter where that's happening, it's kind of each of us trying to see like what we can give, like to get, as you see, you're watching on YouTube, I'm like moving my hands closer together as we try to get closer to a way we can solve the problem, or like that we can address that as an issue, where we honor both of us. Which is so important to know, though, that like that's okay. You are experiencing that on either side. If so many of my patients who come in then with so much shame for having that need, the fact that as maybe an autistic person, like, no, I need you to care more about language. I need you to help me because it's going to help me stay regulated. And again, there are other things we can do to regulate ourselves, but like it's also okay that your brain works a certain way and there are things you need to support it, and vice versa. That it's okay that her brain.
Like, that's really hard for my brain. Doesn't mean I'm not going to try, but it also, I think a lot of us are afraid to like mess things up. So it's like, you're going to say that. It doesn't mean I don't care about you, but I'm not just like, F you, I'm not doing it, but I'm going to tell you that most of the time I'm probably not going to do it because that's just not how my brain works. So like that's hard, obviously on both ends. We've been together for a while. So I feel like, you know, we can learn new habits and new whatever. So like it gets a little easier, but also like, you know, I think in general for anything in life, when we are more dysregulated, all that stuff's going to be heightened. We have an infant. She's 4 months old. And
shout out to Indy.
Yeah, shout out to Indy. But, you know, both of us are a lot more tired, right? We're running off of a lot less sleep right now. There's just like a new added stressor in life. We bought a new house. So just like things are different. And I think that both of us, I know that both of us are more dysregulated than normal. So I feel like some of these things have actually come up more recently than maybe they would at other times because we're just already tired. We're already whatever. So then it's like when we have these communication things, they feel like a bigger deal in our brain than it probably would have if we had 9 hours of sleep and we were just living our normal life. So I think just sometimes acknowledging that too, where it's like, hey, this feels a little bit more triggery to me right now because I'm running off of 3 hours of fumes.
Yeah, stressors are additive. So when we're talking about stressors that really affect the nervous system, we'll talk about the nervous system a lot because it's so core. I had a patient the other day who was like, this is really the key to like everything, isn't it? And I was like, yeah.
And sometimes I forget that. Like, and we talk about it constantly. And then it's like when you're like, oh wait, hold on, let me just remind myself that's the thing. It's like, oh yeah.
It's what controls basically every operating system in your body and impacts all of it. So it always is important. But the top 5 things that can dysregulate the nervous system are non-restorative sleep and rest, pain, dehydration and electrolyte imbalance, hypoglycemia, and emotional and physical stressors. Any of those things can basically start tipping the scales and take your nervous system from like calm, cool, stable in that parasympathetic state to start working up that pyramid of activation. Yeah. Like right now I threw my back out and then
my back is always fucked, to be honest.
Yes, has permanently fucked back. And then we've got the sleep issue. So both of us are waking up right now already hitting 2 non-restorative sleep and rest and pain on our dysregulation, like the biggest hits to the system. Well, that's great. Yeah. Like, so the thing is, when one of those is off, I always think of them like a little pendulum, like swinging. And when it gets off, it swings and they're each close to each other. So it's going to hit the next one and then it's going to hit the next one. So like quite literally, if you're in pain, had bad sleep, you're going to have more issues with dehydration. You may find you're thirstier. Hypoglycemia. Gosh, I know, like if I have, like short sleep or poor sleep, I wake up so freaking hungry.
Again, a lot of that too, that was leptin. So it's like when you sleep, I guess I forget, don't quote me on this. I forget. Somebody's gonna be like, this is so whatever. But I think it like it regulates your leptin somehow. And so when you don't sleep, that hormone doesn't, whatever it's supposed to do, suppress or not suppress or whatever. And so like you literally feel hungrier, even though you don't always necessarily need more calories. Your body's still telling you do. So you might still feel hypoglycemic, so you still have to eat. So it's like, that's a really hard thing.
So all those things are tied together. So like you get poor sleep, you're going to have worse hypoglycemia. And then, if you remember, one of the ones I said were physical and emotional stressors. So poor sleep, back pain, physical stressors. For me, one of the big ones is sound and then the wind or temperature. So I'm going to be more sensitive to it being hot or cold. Everything's going to sound louder than normal.
Yeah, so I have my own sensory things. I'm not throwing this to you, but yours are just a little more obvious sometimes, I think. And so for you with sound, like sometimes she doesn't know, or I don't know, of course, either, but like that she's dysregulated. And like, I think one day I was like opening like a bag of like broccoli and she was like,
it's Brussels sprouts.
Like she was like, okay, I'm gonna go put my headphones on because like that just like
it sounded like it was literally like in my head.
Yeah.
And she was like over in the kitchen and like we open bags of vegetables often and it doesn't really register for me. And she did. And it was like actual pain.
Yeah.
Which we know actually people with sensory sensitivities, which again are common in the neurodivergent community, that it actually does register as pain in the brain. So it literally is painful. So it was my responsibility then to go and try to do something.
It's like kind of baggy, so it looks me. It's fine.
She doesn't look like Quasimodo.
Yeah, no shade to Quasi.
No,
I'm sorry. We're talking about pain. Yeah,
sensory experience.
Yeah, Brussels sprouts. You're feeling more heightened.
How those stressors are basically. So all this was about how we may be more reactive or have a hard time communicating or more sensitive even to those words or things like that because poor pain and poor sleep, those two added together, emotional stressors, like that's going to be added too. So,
I mean, like, okay, so I guess outside of this, and maybe neurotypical, I believe they all do. Everybody feels this way because this is just the nervous system. So whether you're neurodivergent or not, like this is still going to be a thing. But I know for myself, if I'm running off of low sleep, I just feel more emotional too, right? Like little stressors, no matter what they are, I feel like I'm going to cry way more easy, way easier. And so just throwing that out there too, like something can just feel so overwhelming, even though, and I'm like, I know that if I were sleeping and I was whatever, like this wouldn't be like, it's especially weird when you can like know that. Like I consciously know that if I was rested, this is not a big deal. Like I can tell you it's not a big deal, but right now I'm so tired that like this, I'm just gonna collapse.
Right. So again, like when you're fatigued and you're in that activated state, the blood flow is going to be diverted to basically what it feels like it needs in a threat situation. So the body's like really complex, but it's also really, really simple. So anything that dysregulates it, it basically is just like threat. It doesn't know the difference between like tiger, between somebody cutting you off on the highway, between like an email, between like poor sleep. Your body is just reading those things as threatening demands a lot on the system. So when that happens, all your blood flow is diverted away from the things that you think of as like you when you're calm, like digestion, like your ability to have, well, we're going to have an episode about that. It's always, we're going to have to have an episode.
This girl. Or it's eat fiber, walk. I'm like, would you like to see my fiber? Am I walking? It's really good. Would you like to see how I don't poop ever?
Save that. We're going to tag that and have that for a future episode. Damn, this is living with ADHD.
I know.
What were we talking about?
I'm sorry.
Oh, diverting blood flow away from the things that like are really like necessity for like thriving. So when we think of ourselves like as who we are, we're peaceful, whatever, that's really the prefrontal cortex part of our brain, like the top, like big squishy part. Like that's where we house like our decision making, our morals, our values, our creativity, all of that. Our amygdala is where our fight, flight, freeze, fawn response comes into. So when we are in that activated state at any degree, we start losing blood flow to the prefrontal cortex, and a lot of that's shifted over to the amygdala. So exactly. So again, like our ability to even access logic, to understand that logic, to apply that logic, like you can't. Like,
but sometimes I say, like, I feel like I'm like, I can logically know that this is, like silly, but emotionally it's just overriding it.
So until your system actually comes back down, you can't do anything with that logic.
Yeah. That was like, so Indy was like, I don't know, a month old for up here. Of course she was. She's old at one point in her life. She's 4 months now, but at one point she was 1 month old. And she went through a phase where she like would like refuse to bottle feed. So Kalin is breastfeeding and then she pumps and somebody's all bottle feed her. And she was like refusing it. And I remember being like, promise you that I logically and consciously know this has nothing to do with me. She is 1 month old. She wants to breastfeed. That is very normal. And I realized that. But in the moment, I was just so tired that I was like, I can tell though that I am taking it personally. And my brain is like, she doesn't like you. And so I was like crying about it. But I was like, I also like, I logically know that this is not real and this is whatever. But like the emotional side, but again, because I was really tired of the brain, was just like, I just can't like, I can't not feel that. And it's like, there is enough here. It's like I know this, but this is just overriding it,
the scales are tipped in that moment. Like you have to have blood flow. Like if I cut off blood flow to like my hand, it would get like weak. It wouldn't like work well. That's literally what's happening in your brain. So also like tell the shame, take a back seat with that. Like you don't have access to that. And that's why we so often talk about like regulatory coping skills, because like you basically have to get calm again to restore that blood flow, whether you're doing like physical things to do that, like mental things like to do that, doesn't matter, or just get your body into that like regulated state. Like you have to have that for the blood flow to return to that area. One of the things that I think is always cool that we talk about this in, where you can see an example of this. So they will do like in like the NFL, the biofeedback training with the quarterbacks specifically to basically in these high stress situations for them to be able to stay in that calm regulated state. So they have a high amount of blood flow to their prefrontal cortex where they can access their creative decision making on the spot, on the fly. If they were constantly in that high aggressive mode where they're like really, really up here in their nervous system, they're going to be really reactive and not responsive to the situation and not be able to be creative about where do I throw it. So when you think about some of like the most successful quarterbacks, I promise you that like what makes them successful is their ability to regulate their nervous system in high stress situations. Totally. Other players on the field, not as important. They don't necessarily always have to have access as much to creative decision making.
False start.
Yeah, exactly. Like those players are going to be just thinking about like, take man out, like exactly like that's what they have access to, and that's what's important for their brains. But that's you when you're in that tired fatigue situation.
What's the guy who used to, is it David Blaine, or who's the one that used to, or Chris, I don't know, there's a multiple of them, right, where they like get into water and they like, you know, like, but you basically have to be so calm because they were to freak out.
That's when they can do it. Yeah, it's like really,
I wonder if they practice. It is like meditation, obviously. I mean, it's a form of that. I promise we're not going to be meditation gurus over here.
No, but
there's no shade to it. It's just, it's a very simple answer.
It's only one way and one approach to get to,
like, it's a great thing. I just sometimes think it's just like the easy answer.
It doesn't work for all of us, not in like the classic way. So like we're going to offer a whole bunch of other ways that like we in our lives are able to get ourselves calm, which I'll throw that to kind of, we'll start putting a bow on the end of this first episode, but to give you kind of, I don't know, some action steps, I guess, that like we like to do in these settings. Number one, again, like trying to make ourselves laugh. Like laughing is the same as crying, and that they're both ways to actually regulate the nervous system. So
I think it pulls you out of things too. You know what I mean? Sometimes like things can feel so heavy and serious. And so if you can find something that's funny about it, then it is really helpful.
Yep. So we love though combining that with doing vocalizations. So when you sing, when you hum, anything like that, yell, all of that basically has you, it vibrates in your throat, it'll vibrate the vagal nerve, which runs down the back of your neck, down the front of your throat, down your chest to your gut. So that's why, again, like throughout time, chanting, humming, singing, all of those things have been present like in all cultures, like
except for white people. Well, not like it used to be in white people's culture. I feel like back like the Scottish people, I feel like them doing it. I just think now we've like kind of tried to remove ourselves from that.
We have,
and so it's like, oh, we don't do that, and it's like, no, we need to be doing
actually
that. Like it's So
I heard a quote one time. Now don't remember who said it. So shout out to whoever did. Props to you. It was basically, to be able to be well, you need to be willing to get weird, which is in society, actually, a lot of the practices that allow us to be well are now socially deemed as weird.
Yeah, that's valid. Yeah. Even like how we sit. And then this is another, I know she said we're gonna wrap this up, but like our idea of like professionalism, right? Where like you can't sit with your legs up, you can't, it's like, well, what if I have bad blood flow, or, you know, just silly things like that, that it's like, you're just supposed to be uncomfortable. And it's like, well, now I'm super dysregulated.
That
I didn't listen for 5 hours because I wasn't supposed to. And now I'm really dysregulated. You know? I'm just saying.
Yeah, that's one that that should be the sixth one. That's like the sixth wonder of the world. Like the sixth wonder of dysautonomia.
Seriously,
holding in your farts is definitely a thing.
Were you talking? It was me again.
That's probably what will usually happen. That's okay. We'll always find our way back.
Yeah. You're talking about ways that we can help regulate, and you said that you like giggling.
So giggling, but also again, so yes, vocalizations. So we will make up funny songs and like sing them out loud, or we will just like go into some like nice operatic like voice, or we'll just do these little like loud vocal like calls and like drills to each other. Stuff like that.
Yep. One sounds like we're in an aviary.
Quick, easy ways to make each other laugh and make ourselves laugh, and then also simulate that vagal nerve.
I do like, this is also, it gets very, I don't like that these are like woo-woo, because this is actually a really great practice. So sometimes it just, or not woo, it just like sounds so like easy. Be thankful, be grateful, whatever. However, that is really great. And they found that like when you do practice gratitude, right, that you can't be as stressed. But so sometimes though, I also think this is funny. So I think it's like both, where, you know, I know both of us have tried to reframe things sometimes, like, hey, how lucky am I that I get to clean the floor? And like really it is just reframing it, but also also was kind of funny, you know, because it's like, I don't know, like our dog threw up on the floor and you're like, how lucky am I that I get to
I have a dog that I get to
yeah. So like clean the both, where it's like, I am trying to reframe it instead of just being pissed about the scenario. I am grateful because I do love my dog. Also, this is kind of funny. And so it's just kind of like, it just kind of changes your perspective of it sometimes. Like, how lucky am I that I get to drive a car in this really crappy traffic? You know, it's just like, it's whatever. It's like not trying to find toxic positivity by any means. Just like a little bit of a reframe.
Little touch of sarcasm in there, along with, no, but I actually am really grateful I have a dog.
Exactly.
But also,
yeah, like I'm acknowledging that this sucks, but I'm trying to make it less sucky, I guess. I don't know. Yeah.
Both are true. Yeah. So one of the other things I just want to mention here at the end of the podcast too, that's going to be a core part of it. As you heard, like there were a lot of moments of just like pauses and us like tripping over words and things like that. One of the things that was really important to us with this podcast, being that we're like really sinking into our authentic neurodivergent selves, is not having it be highly edited. So we want to keep in the trip ups. We want to keep in those very
can't blame anything on the edit
moments. Yeah, can't blame it on the edit. Like, nope, it's just gonna be raw. We're raw dogging it here. No protection. Yeah. So you're gonna get all of it. So stick with us as we sometimes are reaching for our words or get lost in our storytelling. But I imagine most of you listening to this podcast, your brains probably work similarly. So you may not even notice.
Great. Because following along.
We're all in this together, like High School Musical.
Yep.
So that's going to do it for our episode today. Our goal to start will be doing episodes monthly. As we kind of work this into our lives, we may try to get more episodes out, especially if a lot of you guys like and listen to the pod, which, check us out. We will be on YouTube and wherever you listen to your podcasts. So please like, subscribe, follow along. We'll have the next episode out next month in April.
My birthday month.
Yeah, her birthday month. I just had my birthday month.
Yeah,
Both 37. It's happening. We're on that road to 40. But yeah, you can definitely check both of us out on our websites, kalinjohnson.com. That's KALINJOHNSON. And then marniebothmer.com.
Oh, mine's harder. I mean, it's not. I just MarnieBothmer.
Yeah, that'll also be in the show notes as well. But if you're interested in working with either of us one-on-one in our practices, definitely check that out. Book an initial consult with either of us. We'd be happy to help. We both work with people all over the country, all over the world. So reach out to us. Otherwise, we will see you next time. Thank you for joining us on Queens of the Neuroverse podcast, our very first episode.
Love it.
All
Thanks,
right,
friends.
We love it. We love you all. We'll see you next time.
Thank you for joining us on this episode of the Queens of the Neuroverse podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, please like and subscribe to the podcast. If you're ready for individualized support, head on over to KalinJohnson.com and MarnieBothmer.com to work with us one-on-one. Reign and repeat, my queens. Reign and repeat. None of the information presented in this podcast should be used or applied personally without consulting with your doctor about your symptoms, diagnoses, treatment, and the safety of applying any information discussed. All the information discussed reflects only the experience of the host and should be used for educational purposes only. This podcast does not replace the guidance and/or prescription of a physician. By listening to this podcast, your acceptance of this medical disclaimer is implied.